Okay, hello everyone and welcome to the first webinar of ELTA in 2022. Today we will continue our series we started last year on funding issues for legal tech startups, because that's probably one of the most asked questions for ELTA. Can you help us find funding? How do we approach investors? How we prepare ourselves for pre-seed, seed, and so on? So we guess at Series A, you probably have figured it out, but the first step is always the hardest. So we had 2 webinars last year and wanted to continue. And one of the very important aspects is how to structure legally your first investment rounds, where to look, what to keep in mind, and even in a legal tech startup, if you're a legal professional, so you're coming from a legal background and are going to start a legal tech startup, doesn't mean that you know everything about deal structure. And you always keep in mind, if you're approaching a professional investor, they are always way better positioned in terms of legal preparedness. They have lawyers who are specializing on structuring deals and drawing up agreements and so on. So you should know there are a lot of traps on that way. And we invited Anna de Stefano. She is a business angel and a startup mentor. So she has seen quite a lot of deals, quite a lot of ups and downs, and she's a legal professional. So Anna today will enlighten you a little bit more, give you some hints what to look at, how to prepare yourself, what to keep in mind, so that you're not going into the same traps as your predecessors. So welcome, Anna. Thank you for doing that, and the floor is yours.
Thank you very much. Thank you for this presentation that always puts some pressure on, and but I hope that everything will go all well, especially in such a nice company with ELTA member, with whom I share also the idea of bringing innovation to the legal system through technology, but also through human, because I think that innovation is always human-centered. And I'm very happy to be here and try to sort of going through the, let's say, the most, at least the first legal aspects of when building up a startup. I tried to share my screen, and it will be here. That's it. Great, so it seems it works. Let's see. Okay, let's put it this way. So, startups, what about legal clauses when racing around? And I also remember, choose your investors. Not all term sheets are made equal. And I hope that this will be also one of the takeouts of my lecture. The fact to have a little bit more acquaintance with the effect or the reason why there are some clauses, and those in this way help startups, help founders discuss and negotiate the better clauses for themselves, especially choosing the right investors for themselves, because also investors are very important for a startup. Shareholders and founders are, of course, are the core, and shareholders follow on, but right investors can really make the difference. And also, what a strange together pair, legal and startups, which usually are seen or thought totally different. Legal is really fixed in their old codes, and startups full of energy and innovations. What I also would like to do with this presentation is try to show that the legal can be clear and engaging, and can be interesting and can be useful. So in order to show that legal and startups are not that far away, but let's say two different ways that to build, to bring in innovation, to bring in energy, to creating value, to creating a new value and a new technology and activity, also through using in a wiser way the legal aspects when discussing the founding of a startup. What this presentation is, just to be clear and to set everything clear from the beginning, what this presentation is not. This is not a course in jurisprudence. I'm not a professor. I'm a CPA as a background, though I worked a lot for with lawyers and for lawyers. Then I'll tell a little bit about myself. So it's not a legal consultation. Well, I know there are a lot of very good lawyers that can help you. And it's not the ultimate word about the legal aspects of a startup. Because this presentation wants to be a practical approach to the most common clauses in term sheets, also based on my experience and a bit, of course, of knowledge. And that also want to show the huge and the importance of pay attention to the legal aspects when building up a business. Even if it is a very innovative business, even if it's made in a garage, pay attention to the legal aspects. On the other side, the legal aspect has to be comprehensible and reasonable. So not in Latin, not in jargon, not in really gray and small fonts, but in a way that can be immediately understood and can be helpful to bring on and to manage the company. So a few words about my experience. I am the I am also working as a Chief Legal Design and Communication Officer at Doorway, an Italian scale-up that is a fintech platform for online investing in startups. So we want to, with this, we want to show also that the legal aspects can be value and can be part of the value proposition of a scale-up to build up its community of investors. I've always been very passionate about execution and about the growth of companies, always through teams and always through themes and always through the building of values because I think that the economic value of a company comes out also from the values of the people that work in it and manage it. And I always thought also that the legal information and legal services can be engaging, clear and practical and inclusive. And also do that using legal design, which is a really powerful tool to create this mixture of competences that can help bringing out value, even more value for business from the legal aspects. For more than 24 years, I've been the managing director of a legal publishing company here in Italy that I managed since the beginning. So in a certain way, I've already made my startup. And as a business angel, I've seen around 800 pitches. I invested in a few startups. I'm a business mentor and advisor to startups, both startups and accelerators. So I've been in a certain way from both sides of the desk, and that's why. And so this lecture comes out from this experience. I tried to put together the information both of a professional and of a manager or of a founder. Hopefully that it will be helpful for other people. And what I always try to do is put purpose in everything you do. So going on the legal clauses, what I always suggest to the young founders that I meet is to approach legal clauses as a problem, as a business problem. So it's not something that has to be totally devoted to lawyers, but it's something that has to be managed by founders, as they manage a lot of different other variables. And so approaching legal clauses, I would suggest them that they search for the why. So that when read the clauses, they try to understand why those clauses are written and are written that way. And also think that almost everything is negotiable. So be ready to be very hard in negotiating, but the more you understand the why of clause, the more the negotiation could be effective. Three, let's say, point to put in practice what I just said. Try to understand the reason of the clauses. Always try to understand why the problem or the reason why the investor has put that clause in the contract. Which is the problem that they want to face, which is the situation that they want to avoid, which is the background reason. Because the more you understand this reason and the more you understand also the practical point of this reason, the more you can understand the limit or the possibility of your negotiation. Another point is, when reading a legal clause in a contract, think about the real situation. So think in real life when that clause can be put in practice. What does it mean? What happens when the clause is put in practice? Which are the situations that are around? Which are the operational aspects linked to it? Because if you translate the legal words in facts and in situations, it helps to understand the moments in which those clauses could be effective, and also understand the possible consequences that come out, and also how things work around that clause, and that also can make you understand the importance of the clause and if it's acceptable or not, or what would you like to negotiate about that. But so put in practice, in real situation, what you read in a contract. And also, of course, try to imagine what is in the future, because legal terms, of course, usually they rule the future. And so think also, what kind of future are you thinking for your startup? What kind of developments of team, of clients, of markets, of business plan you think for your startup? And so see how those clauses can impact on this future. So that you can be able to understand, evaluate the consequences and try to reduce if those consequences are not the ones that you like. Also, another thing that I would suggest is think about, when thinking to the future, also think about what are your absolutely no. Which are the situations that you really don't want, which are the solutions that you really don't want, and match the clause with these no's. If the clause goes against one of your no's, probably you can't accept that clause if in the position of not accepting the clause, and in case not accepting the investor. Otherwise, just negotiate what you prefer and not well. And so this is a way when starting reading a term sheet, a contract, a general approach to understand and go through legal clauses. Another interesting point to bear in mind is that investors are different. Investors are different according to the lifetime of a startup, and so its growth stage. And also they're different, and each of us is different, and also investors in every category is different. So pick up the right investors for your stage and for the alignment with your values and your industry. But there is one common aspect, is that your investors, they search the remuneration of their investment mainly from the value of their exit. That is the amount of money that they would get when selling their shares. So this kind of investor usually don't look for dividends, because usually with startups, dividends are not that often distributed, and especially they're not distributed, and if any, they're distributed far away. So those investors will become shareholders, so they will become very close friends of yours, and they would search to monetize their investment when they exit by selling their shares. This is also very important, because it will help understand why there are some clauses in the term sheet, and which are the goals that the investors, so your best friends, will have with you while growing the startup. And I indicated here the main kind of investors of how to raise funds. At the beginning, these are the 3 Fs. Friends, family, and fools, so that are really your family, that really at the beginning, the ones that they love you and they fall in love with your idea, and so they're ready to help you. They're really, both psychologically, but also with some funds, with some fundings. Usually, so they really trust you. They give you the fundings because of you and the trust they have on you. But I always suggest at a certain point, if you write down few rules about those money, is always better, because, as I say, things go on for a very long time. Things can always change, and lots of people change. So if you have something that makes things clear, it could be useful. Then, let's say when you have already some market validation, probably a little MVP, there are the business angels that are the first professional investors that believe in your project and want to invest in you and give you money. So in this case, the legal stuff already starts to be a bit more comprehensive and well done, well-rounded. Also because usually business angels tend to work all together to make deals. And probably they also used to stay together with the incubators. So investing in startups that come out from in acceleration programs. So here, already the legal aspects already start to be interesting and can be more rounded. But what is also very important of this kind of investment is the smart money that usually business angels bring with them. Several times, the most part of the value of a business angel is not only the amount of money that they put in, but this is the smart money, their network, their competences, their mentoring, their capacity of following, of supporting you, that is of great value, especially when the new company has to start. And while going on with the other funding rounds, because also in the startup life, foundings are divided in rounds, so you will have several rounds of financing needs, and also this always have it in mind when signing the legal contracts, because those contracts will be the base for the next contracts. So make well consider the calculations and try to think, I would say, think in the future. How do you prospect your activity in the future? Also to evaluating when signing the contracts for the different rounds. And so as soon as the company starts being at the seed level or post-seed level, VCs starting getting in, usually with a Series A, and those are professional investors with professional organization, usually also with their own term sheets, very well structured, and also with an investor thesis, an investor scheme, and also. And of course, they're very much more structured. And with them, the negotiation is a bit more complicated, but also there, try to choose your VCs, because also in VCs are different among themselves, because also of the verticals in which they operate, of the returns that they want to get, of also the length of the investment that usually they accept. And this is quite interesting, and is also where the negotiation is tougher. There is also the possibility of getting funding through crowdfunding, but I would set it aside because it's it has a bit of different legislation. It varies a lot. So bear in mind also there is a crowdfunding act in case we can do another webinar on crowdfunding. But at the end of all these, have fun. And have fun, build trust, because you will go a really long and uncertain way along with your investors. So get empathic with them, try to find people that really want to help you and that share with your project and want to make your company the best company in the world. So they want to earn their money, so from the exit, because your company is grown. So that the investors that are more willing to build the growth of the company rather than reducing their risk or bring home their money. So these, I think, are also other points that are very interesting to bear in mind. Have fun, because you need fun when there are all those ups and downs, and build trust. At the end, there are a lot of things that is trust. So the legal clauses, what are they in a term sheet? It's mainly the balancing between reducing the risk taken by investors giving you the money and maintaining the motivation and the convenience for the founders in going on in such a long way of a startup. So these are the two aspects. The risk, reducing the risk of the investors and maintaining the motivation and convenience for the founders. We can go through the legal aspects, or at least the first legal aspects of the startup that the startup meet in their life. Terms. So once some of the now more known is term sheet and then investment contracts. What are they? Term sheet is the starting contract. Is the starting contract for getting some fundings. It's usually a preliminary agreement between the startup and one or more investors that will provide fundings in exchange of equity. So they will become shareholders. So with the term sheet, usually the parties set up the most part of the rules that then will be used in the investment contract that will be the final contract after which the company or the startup will get the money and the investor will become a shareholder. But the main aspects and the main conditions usually are set already in the term sheet. After the term sheet, so the investors start their due diligence to see if everything is according to their standards, and when with the positive due diligence, they sign, let's say, the investment contract. Is also the term sheet is also used by accelerators and incubators, because usually these also in accelerator incubators have their funds, their VC funds together, and so they don't provide only the services to make your startup grow, but also they invest in the best startups that are in their accelerators. So really, the term sheet, as soon as you start entering the startup world, a bit more structured, you will find the term sheet coming out to you. So just remember that this is a preliminary contract, the contract that puts out the frame of the fundings that probably the investors will do will give you after they've done the due diligence on your activities. But also remember that there are another kind of contract that are the safe standard agreements on future equity. That is really typical American. It comes from Y Combinator. which I would say in Italy could be a little bit similar to convertible notes. So in what they differ from an investment contract and why to use them? These usually are used to leave the decision about the valuation of the startup in another moment, in a later moment. So you decide, you set up the clauses, the most important clauses, but then so at the beginning, it's more a contract of debt that it will become a participation, a participation contract in a following moment when the startup will search for another round of financing. Thus, bringing on the valuation, the moment of the valuation later on in time. And usually this is very used at the beginning of a startup when you really have an idea and there have 3-4 founders that are really motivated, that do a lot of work, but you cannot, and you probably this idea seems to be very interesting and efficient and successful, but you have no clue if it will really have become this way. So if you want to put some money in, then you could use this technique. And also, especially if you use the safe, so if you're more in US environment, in this way it is very flexible because it's a really standard and simple contract. You don't have to negotiate that much, and you can use it to have a one-to-one signature, because usually when you have a term sheet, when you have term sheet or also sometimes convertible notes, you put all the investors together. You have only one term sheet, and then you put all the investors together. You have to negotiate that term sheet with all the investors together, and then all signed together. With the safe, you have it already, you have it done, and whenever you find new investors, you can just sign that safe, and the investor is onboarded, and it keeps going on, and so you gain speed and easy formalities. So think about these possibilities, and also consider the valuation. The valuation is not, let's say, a legal term, but is crucial anyhow in any negotiation. And there are a lot of other legal clauses, pure legal clauses, that at the end come up to the valuation that you consider. Because the higher the valuation is, the more pressure you put on the team to keep going, keep growing those valuations later on, and this is not always possible, or at least there is the great risk that sometimes you have a stop, and that it can be difficult also from an investor point of view. If the valuation is too small, is too little, then let's say the shareholder the percentage of shares for founders can reduce itself too quickly, and this way it will leave you really little money when exiting the company, or also even before reducing the motivation of making such an effort with the startup. So the valuation, it's not a legal term, but I always put on a highlight on it because it's really the core also of the activities for founders to have an interest in bringing on their activity, their startup, and having motivation and economical results when exiting the company. And also think that evaluation, because you will have several rounds, you will have to dilute your percentage as a founder in the company, make the right choices also at the right moment to raise the funds at the rounds at the right moments in order to balance these two aspects of valuation. So, which are the most common clauses in a term sheet? We go back to the term sheet. We go back, let's say, to the most common legal aspect of a startup when starting a startup. I would say that there are three. These clauses are mainly three. And probably these three are the ones that are really are core for the investors' business model. The others pay attention. So these three are liquidation preference, tag along, and bad lever, or on the way around, the lock-in clauses, which also bring to the bad lever. And here again, consider that because of the different rounds, the clauses that you accept in one round will be the base for the following rounds. So also when going back at the first slide, think about the clause, understand the clauses, and bring them to the future. Try also to figure out the consequences of that clause in the next rounds, in the clauses that will be put in for the next rounds, and negotiate about it, or decide whether to accept it or not. So the liquidation preference, the reason why is that investors want to be assured that they will get their money back before the founders or before anyone else. Of course, if the exit is wonderful, is great, it's not a major problem. But if there are problems, if the exit is so-so, that can make a difference. If the company almost goes bankrupt or is just doing its minimum, that makes a big difference, really big difference. I know that some founders, for example, they had to close their startup and they went to renegotiate with the nicer investors this liquidation preference, because otherwise they would gain nothing from years of work. So pay attention to this. And the liquidation preference usually says that when there is a liquidation event occurs, investors will get their money back before founders, and sometimes also with some multiples. That could be even 4 times, 2 times. That's negotiation. It can be participating or non-participating. Usually the non-participating is more favorable to founders. What does it mean? It means that with the participating liquidation preference, investors will get, let's say, twice the revenues from the liquidation event. One that is at the beginning, so that will get their money back before all the others, and sometimes also multiplied. The remaining sum, they would still get then the percentage that derives from their shareholder participation in the remaining sum of the liquidation event. So we would see this is a very high, a very tough clause. When it's structured this way, is really favorable for investors. Everything that is in between, you can negotiate. I also seen clauses in which that they were with some multiple, but they gave the choice to investor either to choose either a multiple of the liquidation event for the liquidation, or they share directly. They share the percentage of the liquidation that is compared to the shares. So you could also structure it according to making a choice, or also putting a cap that so the investors will have a liquidation preference of 4 pair, but till a cap of, I don't know, 200 million. So that's really up to the negotiation. One point is, when evaluating also this clause, consider again about the future rounds, because on 90%, if not 100%, you will have to put that at least that clause for the future investors. So it will remain for the entire amounts of fundings that will come out even later, and probably the following rounds will be bigger, and so at the time there could be also million of fundings, and you can easily make the calculation if then the liquidation preference participating liquidation preference with some multiples. then I think calculation about million of fundings is easy made. Tag along, reason why usually investors want to have the possibility of selling their participation whenever a good offer comes. And so they, in this case, it's usually that if someone else in the of the shareholders, and that usually could be either founders or shareholders, receive an offer for their participation, investors have the right, not the obligation usually, to sell pro quota their participation. So that means that if there is an offer for 40% of the company, all at least investors, the shareholder, but also the investor will participate by selling his share in pro quota. So in this way, you can see how the bonds among founders and investors are quite strong, because usually you don't arrive at that situation out of the blue. You are there because you arrive at that point because you're already searching for investors. So when you start negotiation as a founder, usually you also consider the investors, you also talk with the investors. And because of this bond, this ties, usually it's always better to start negotiating before also with the investors what will be the activity with this if there is a possible buyer of at least some of the shares. And another is the lock-in clauses that have also the other clauses as a good lever or bad lever. And the reason why here is quite, I would say, simple or evident. Investors invest in teams. And of course, they don't want the teams leave or they lose focus and even less lose motivation. So usually in the term sheet, there are some lockup clauses in which the founding teams have to remain at least for 2 or 3 years, and together with other clauses like non-compete, non-solicit, and non-disclosure clauses. And that is, I think, self-explaining. And usually there are also clauses that wants to rule if there are some reasons for which the founder, one or more of the founders have or want to leave. Because, as I said, the legal terms manage the future, and the future is uncertain by definition, and everything changes. So if things changes, let's say in a good way, either because the founder doesn't fit anymore with the company or whatever, there is a sort of good lever. So there is the term sheet already organizes and rules the way in which the founders can leave the company, and let's say the consequences of the rules in which the founder could leave the company. If unfortunately there are some major problems with one of the founders, and there are some more serious reasons for the founder to leave, then there are also this part that usually is already ruled in the term sheet in order to make things clear. And in that case, we'll say bad lever, and usually there are also the rules and the cases in which they apply. And usually the consequences is that the founder has to sell its share at face value, which usually is almost nothing, because the most value is not face value, is set aside in reserves. And so that usually is the most common consequence that is put on for a bad lever clause. This This, I mean, the lock-in clauses usually, especially at the beginning, especially when the term sheets are signed and everyone is in good faith, is not something strange, because teams wants to work, founders want to work about their ideas, about their projects, so they're willing to do that, and investors want exactly that founders do their best on their startups. So there is no problem to think about a long-term relationship. But so with just consider the clauses, when if something breaks, and it could break. So just set the rules and keep going on making a wonderful startup. So if these are the three general clauses and three clauses that mostly everyone has in, again, try to show the balance among the risk taken by the investors and the interest of the founders to have their company to growing and earn more money and motivation. There are still, let's say, three other common clauses that then also they're also negotiate about them. That are the governance rights, the drag along clause, and the preferred sale clause. Governance clauses, I think that also here are quite easy to understand why, because as we're saying, founders and investors is a long time relationship. Investors want to understand what the founders do with their money, if they stick, and want to be sure that they can control that the money are not given away or they're totally given to a different project or different object. I mean, usually the most experienced investors and VCs reduce these governance clauses to really few aspects, extremely big, extremely important, like change of the scope of the company, like or opening up a branch or selling out of the company. So really crucial point of the activity of the company, not the ordinary one, not the daily one. But then, of course, that also depends on the investors, on the negotiation. What is important for founders is they can maintain their grit and the skills and their fast speed of managing the company, adjust, pivoting, making tests, trying new markets, trying new strategies, because that's mainly also what having a startup is. And also, and on the other side, always keeping what it was said, that also the big picture agreed with the investors, so that the business plan and business objectives is still maintained the same. So in the terms, the governance terms can be various, could be some persons in the board of directors, the vote, the right of vote about certain subjects, exclusivity for other decisions. Here, each situation is unique, and each case is unique and has to be judged it has to be judged according every day in every single situation. Then the drag along, that's a different clause, always linked to the possibility of exit. That is, the reason why is that if the investors find a good opportunity to sell the company, they can do it. They have no, the other shareholders cannot block it. And this for an investor is very important, because as I said before, investors see it as a revenue for their money, the money they can make from the exit, not dividends, but the exit, the sale price. And investors, especially the professional ones that don't want to be stuck in a startup forever. So they periodically they search for selling the company. And so the drag along clause usually says that if the investors, and also it can happen also with founders or even a shareholder, receive an offer to buy the majority of the company, the shares of the company, all the shareholders have to sell it. And this applies, of course, mainly in the case in which no one owns the majority. So to sell the company, it is needed, it is compulsory that everyone sell its part, a part of its shares. And of course, it happens when the offer is for the entire, for 100% of the shares. You can also have this clause with a minimum price for the company. Let's say that this clause applies if the offer is superior to a floor, to a minimum price. In this way, in a certain way, founders wants to avoid that investors decide to sell their company too early according to their evaluation. So they found this way, founders try to show that they want to gain a lot of growth in their company, and that they want the help of the investor at least till a certain amount of value. And this kind of clause can be also structured this way. On the other side, also investors with this clause want to avoid founders that fall in love with their project, so they will never sell their company, which of course for an investor is not useful. And
Anna, there is one question in the chat from Andre. What do you think about finders, fundraisers, consultants? Is it legal to engage them? Could the startup have adverse implications due to the engagement of finder?
Sorry, I checked it. I haven't understood the founder.
Yeah. What do you think about finders in brackets, fundraising consultants? Is it legal to engage them? Could the startup have adverse implications due to the engagement of finder/fundraising consultants?
In my opinion, in my experience, there is, I don't think that there is against law to have funding consultants, and there are a lot of them that do that. And there are a lot of them. There are a lot of them also that take a percentage of the fundings that you can raise with their help. So I think that from the legal point of view, this activity is legal. I think that also in that case, you should choose the right one. The right one. I mean, someone that is serious, someone that is very well reputed. Reputation is very important in this sector, also because it's a question of trust, and it's a question of long term. So someone that is reputed in the sector and that can understand the deep matching between the startup and the investors. So that is not only I give you money, but is find the right match, the people, investor founders that get along well, and that can help work well together on such a complicated job like running a startup. My opinion, if possible, I would try to go straight to, I would try not to use them and going through, especially now that it's, at least in Europe, there are a lot of fundings, also public, going to startups, or they start also to have the incubators, accelerators that are doing a lot of work. And so trying to go straight or to business angels network, because usually there are a lot of business angel network in all the countries, or also to incubators and accelerators, because as I was saying, that they always have some fundings or investors that usually are reliable which is with whom is easy to talk with. And also use LinkedIn to search for the VCs or the investors that you would like to have, because LinkedIn, I see that is a very powerful tool and it's very used as a platform also to connect in this way. So, but I mean, if you trust some of those consultancy, I think that they're perfectly legal and could be helpful. So going back to the presentation, I'm almost done. So we'll go quickly through also to other questions if there are. Another kind of clause that is very common is the preferred sale clause. And why? Because investors and also founders like to choose the persons that persons that share the company, that will come on board in the company because of this long-term project. And so usually this kind of clauses says that when a shareholder wants to sell his shares, he has to offer them before to the present shareholders at the same conditions, the same price, or let's say of third parties, and so he can sell his shares only if no one in the company wants to buy them. So here, as we were saying before, is also the balance between the fact that the possibility of choosing the persons, the other shareholders that want to be in the company, that we want in the company, with the right of everyone to sell one's shares and not to be obliged to hold them forever. And that I think is quite normal and quite comprehensible, and also quite comprehensible. And also founders usually are quite fond of clauses of this kind because they're the first one that want to be in good company in directing their company. So I hope with this quick lecture, we have seen together that the legal aspects are part of the business because they rule the business, they rule some conditions or also some opportunities in the business. So having some curiosity and also knowing a little bit how to deal, understanding them, can also be very good, that can benefit the business. And this also when dealing with startups, with very uncertain, fast, always changing companies, but that of course still need to work with legal terms and legal activities. So I would say thank you again for the attention. We'll keep in touch. So here is my contact. So if you want to contact me on LinkedIn or send me an email or for whatever, I will be pleased to continue the conversation together. And now what I think could be also very good now is to go back and see some faces, because I haven't seen that many till now. And if there are some questions or else, I'll be happy to answer. Or also, Olga, if there is any comment, whatever.
No questions in the chat, but if anyone has a question, raise the hand or just we unmute you and you can ask right away. So. No questions, everything clear. So
anything clear? I hope everything clear,
well,
or nobody listened, which is
I count that as a success. If there are no questions, then everything is clear. By the way, you mentioned crowdfunding as one possible way. Probably it's 99% sure, and you will see an announcement probably today to tomorrow on LinkedIn. We will have another session on the funding aspects series. We will have a panel of VC investors and legal tech startups who already raised funding, and one of them will be Nick Watson of Ruby Datum, and he just crowdfunded his his seed funding. So as far as I understand, it was seed funding. So he will share his experience with crowdfunding if that's of interest for somebody. I think it's quite an interesting way, but it has its limitations and it's a little bit tricky. But
I think it's a little bit. I think it's a little bit tricky. And also, when you start go through a crowdfunding, communication is really crucial, because you have to be ready to have a huge amount of investors. Yes, which is the counterpart. When you have investors, then you have to put in place a good communication. When you have crowdfunding, you have a lot of investors, so your communication has to be extremely well done. And also another interesting point is that usually VCs don't like to have cap table with a lot of investors. Yeah. So at a certain point, put together your investment. Usually they go into a company that invests, that they join them together in a company that invests in a vehicle that invests in your company. That also is something that is important. And with crowdfunding, usually they do this, but in a certain way impose this, because otherwise it's really very, very difficult.
Yeah, I can imagine. But I guess looking at the market now, probably the easiest way to get funding is issuing some NFTs for your legal tech startup. people are crazy. They are buying everything.
Yes, that there is also all that part about cryptocurrency, blockchain.
Some nice cat pics or something like that, and then you can fund your legal tech startup. Yeah.
Yes.
So, any more questions, comments?
Also comments. I would really appreciate. Also feedbacks. I really would appreciate. It's also my first time here at ELTA.
Directly. Okay, then. If there are no any more questions and comments or whatsoever. Thank you, everyone. Thank you, Anna, very much for educating us today. Thank you, everyone, for joining us. And please keep in touch. Look at our LinkedIn page. There will be all the announcements for the webinar. So there will be quite a lot in the upcoming weeks. So have a good day, good night.
Thank you.
Okay. Bye, everyone.
Thank you very much for the opportunity. Bye.
Thank you, Anna.
Bye-bye.